What's going on again, everybody? It's me, Joel Simmons, back for another episode of It Starts With Me. This is big. All right, so now, first off, you all may notice that I'm in a different environment. Yes, because we are moving. We're keeping things moving, and we're even doing these shows on the road. But nonetheless, we've got a great individual that's going to be coming before you today. He's got an awesome story. He loves children, and I can't wait to dive in. But first, let's go ahead and clear up a few things. It starts with me. It's every single Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We want you to jump on in, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow, DM us. Come on, please get on in here. Be a part of this movement, the It Starts With Me movement. Everybody ought to know that whatever they are going through, whatever they are trying to do, they got to know that first it starts with not you, not them, me, just like it starts with you. All right, so, yes, please, links are in the descriptions below. All right, we also have a few other shows. On Mondays, we have Motivational Mike Monday at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So please jump on in there with Michael Seville, the host with the most, the king of real estate, as he breaks down some of the complex structures of real estate and also gives you some of the best business tips that you could ever ask for. All right. And then at the conclusion of the week, we also have a show with Michael Seville and myself co hosting together the Community Beacon every single Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. You want to be there. What we are doing in there is phenomenal, I believe. And we get some DMs back. We get some people talking about how they enjoy it. Right now, we are just talking about we're concluding wellness. We're going through the whole entire wellness thing. We've had a great time talking about mind, talking about body, talking about spirit, talking about soul. And now we're coming to a conclusion, and we want to go ahead and enjoy that with you. All right? Without further ado, actually, one more thing. I want to know, everybody out there, please let us know if we do It Starts With Me live. How many of y'all would love to come on out and be witnesses to that? Please DM us, get in contact with Anna, all right? And let us know. Info at tenacityfoundation.com. All right, who do we have coming up here next? We have an all-star. He's an author, all right? He's an author right out of Arizona. His name is Gramps Jeffrey, all right? Let's learn a little bit about him. Gramps Jeffrey's children's book that he created, that he wrote, that he authored is called I Don't Want to Turn Three. It explores what goes through a toddler's mind that parents are so desperate to understand. It is based on the true experience he has had with his six grandchildren that were born two each to his three millennial daughters. I mean, how does that work out? Those are great numbers, right? It's a simple story which teaches kids social skills, getting along with others, and the advantages and disadvantages of growing up and growing old. It is written from a child's point of view with an awareness that kids can be selfish but also capable of learning and understanding. Children will find I don't want to turn three completely relatable, and parents will be able to recognize the world from their child's point of view. The book has valuable messages like taking responsibility for your own actions, which is a lesson affecting readers of all ages. Gramps Jeffrey's children's book, I Don't Want to Turn Three, explores what goes through a toddler's mind. All right. And we just got to just jump on in here and learn about this. He also is the pen name for Marc Joseph, whose first book, The Secrets of Retailing, How to Beat Walmart, was written to help entrepreneurs with small businesses compete against the big guys. Ariana Huffington read his book and asked him to contribute to the Huffington Post. Wow, this guy's amazing. He has written over 100 articles about small businesses, education, the homeless, and several other nonprofit topics dear to all of us. Grant and his lovely wife, Kathy, live in Scottsdale, Arizona, where two of his grandchildren live. Two more live in Austin, Texas, and two in Orlando, Florida, right around the corner from us. At this time, let us welcome to the front Gramps.
I appreciate you inviting me onto your show.
Awesome, Gramps. It's excellent to have you, man. I'm so glad to see you. You're looking amazing. Can you hold up your book for those that are looking at
Oh,
the podcast on YouTube?
I don't
There it
want to turn
is.
3.
There
All
it is.
right.
Awesome. So, Gramps, tell me, how has your week been?
This has been a fun week for me. I mean, the weather here in Arizona is just like the weather in Florida right now, and it's great to be outside and interact and be with all the kids. I've got a couple of the grandkids coming over this weekend, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you really enjoy hanging out with your grandchildren, don't you?
Well, I guess the real question is why did I even write this book? Because it's meaningful to me. Living this past year because of the pandemic, caused by the COVID-19 in isolation, except for being able to be with my family, kind of gave me this special time to watch and interact with these kids. And I got to tell you, what a trip that was. All 6 of these kids have completely different personalities. The one thing they do have in common is their sense of curiosity, and how excited they get when they do accomplish something. And watching them grow year to year and how they interact with each other really is the basis for this book. And as a baby boomer myself, I'm trying to understand the world, how it has evolved since I was 3 years old. Is also part of this whole story of this book. My parents, they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have cable TV, they didn't have remotes. I was my dad's remote. He said, "Son, go change the channel," and I was the remote at the time. So, my parents of discipline and growing up was completely different than it is today, all these generations later. And so I'll let your listeners kind of figure out, is it better? Are we raising kids better than we did back in the 50s and 60s? That's also kind of part of the story too.
All right, so that's interesting. You've already, my mind's already percolating right now, just thinking about what you're saying. What do you think in regards to how children were raised back in the time when you were raised versus how children are raised now?
Well, when I was raised in the 50s and the 60s, and my parents were part of the greatest generation this country has ever produced. This generation that my parents were in, they went through the Depression. They had to suffer through all that. They went through World War II. They saved the world from tyranny. And so when they all came back together, and it was a really tight group, they were very disciplined. They had to be, because they had to go through Depression, they had to go through World War II. So they treated us with a lot of discipline. All right. So, I mean, I can remember when I was a little kid, if my brother Larry and I got into trouble, my mother would say, "Wait till your dad gets home." And so we'd wait, and the dad would come home, and he'd take off his belt, and he would chase us around the living room table, with his belt. And that's what discipline was back then. He had this fraternity paddle, and he also was glad to use that on us if he needed to. But one night, we lived up in a small town in Ohio, and it was in the fall. And one night they were out of the house, and my brother and I decided we're going to take his fraternity paddle, and we're going to go bury it in the pile of leaves we had outside the house. So we buried it in the pile of leaves, and it snowed the next day. And then we came back that spring, and the paddle was gone. That was a miracle. To me, that was a sign of the times. The paddle's gone. We're free. But that was discipline back in those days. Now, I think my generation kind of learned that you can't chase your kid around the kitchen table without a belt. There's other ways to do it. So we started to teach our kids, the discipline. We talk to them about it. We try to reason with them and so forth. And so that's the generation now that's out there raising their kids, and I think they're doing a much better job. They took what they learned from us, and the discipline of the kids is even farther ahead. I mean, if you're your little kid today, mom and dad send you to the corner for timeout. So it's a way to get you to kind of concentrate on why you did bad, to get away from your friends, and why am I here? So they're using discipline a lot differently. In fact, I was at my granddaughter's third birthday party a couple weeks ago, and her name is Grace. and she was playing with her brother who's 4.5 years old, so he's a year and a half older than she is, and they were fighting over the trucks that she got for her birthday. And she looks at him and she says, I need my space. And she actually got up and walked over to the side of the sofa and sat down. He looked at her and she says, I need my space too. And he walked over to the other side of the sofa. Now, they didn't learn that on television or through the internet. I am sure that their mother at one time got a little frustrated and said to these kids, I need my space. And she walked away, and that's how it does, but it works. So, discipline today, I think, has come a long way than when I was growing up.
I mean, that's definitely interesting. When I was coming up, which was the late 70s, the 80s, would have been, my first decade of life. I still was concerned about the belt drawer. My mother had a belt drawer, and there were some pretty radical belts. I don't know if you remember, but in the 70s and the 80s, they used to have metal belts. And I was like, there was some scary stuff inside that belt drawer. And not only that, but my mother had this thing where she would say, go out to the bush and get me like this, a switch. And if you came back with a small switch, she'd send you back out, or she would start taking all of them and she would braid them together. And that was what it was. You got hit with whatever was in her hand, or you had to go outside, walk, and bring back your punishment. I'm like, this is corporal punishment. This has got to be against the law. You know what I mean? There's no way in the world you're allowed to do this. And I don't feel as if people can do that as much nowadays. So I guess my question to you would be, do you think that the new techniques that are being utilized, you mentioned, talking and sending children to the corner, do you think that that is working better in place of, the physical punishment, paddle or whatever it is? Or do you think that there should be, some type of combination?
Well, all these physical punishments with the paddles and the belts, they make great stories. But as adults, we think back about that. That's not the way to raise a kid. You know. So I think what adults are doing today is much better. Okay, because we are raising these kids that are 1 to 10 years old. As far as I'm concerned, they are going to become the greatest generation this country has ever produced. And they're the first generation that's coming out of the womb, and they're right on the internet. They're on the iPhones, they're on their pads. I didn't get exposed to that till I was 40 years old. And so, we've got all of this information that we're feeding into our kids, which is great. But we have got to be able to offset that with our experiences through the decades that we have gone. As we grow older, we go from decade to decade to decade, we do grow wiser. And the reason we grow wiser is because we go through more experiences and make a lot more mistakes. So we have got to be able to offset all this great information these kids are learning right when they're 1, 2, 3 years old off the internet with real life experiences. And that really is the role of parents and grandparents today, is to do that balancing act. Because again, with the information these kids are learning at such an early age, if we can combine that with real life experiences, I mean, this generation is going to take this country to a whole new level.
Okay, that was a mouthful, Gramps. That was a mouthful. Uh, so many different things that just start to move inside of my mind. I guess the first one is, okay. So, do you believe that talking or sending a child to the corner is enough all by itself, or is there something else that parents should be doing along with that that would make that work even better?
Well, we should never lose sight that we are the true role models for these kids. In other words, they imitate what we do. So, if we're on our cell phone all day long, I can tell you these kids are going to be on their cell phone all day long. If we are busy on a computer, that's what they're going to do. So we have to be able to offset that. And being the role model for these kids is that we have got to teach them things that they don't normally see on the internet. For instance, what we have to do, and your question was, how is the discipline any better? Well, I think what we have to do is round out the discipline with education. When I say that, I think that what we as parents and grandparents need to do right away, and again, because we're the role model, we're the ones that are setting the tone. If our kids see us reading books, they'll read books. So we've got to make sure that we put that right into into what they're doing, because reading book is one of the first things that we can teach our kids that will make a difference. I mean, why should we teach them how to read books? Well, there's all kinds of benefits for reading books to your kids. One of the benefits, and again, I'm picturing kids 2, 3, 4 years old. You're a parent or grandparent, and you're reading a book. They're sitting on your lap. It's a whole bonding experience. Right? So, in other words, it's a great way to spend quality time with little kids for that 20 minutes, because they're like 20 minutes to read a book, but it gives them a chance to really bond with them, to spend time that you're close to them. That sets an example. Another reason why we should continue to be reading books to kids is it supports listening skills. Now, you and I both know that listening skills is the number one skill that we have learned over life, because the more that we can listen, the more we can communicate, the more we can sell, the more we can teach, but we've got to be able to listen. So if you can teach these little kids skills like listening, because they're going to have to listen to sit and read a book with you, that is priceless as they grow older. Another reason we need to sit down and read books to kids to offset everything else that they're doing is because it teaches them the cognitive and language skills. So, there are plenty of these words in books that they don't understand. Gives you a chance to communicate with them, talk to them, explain to them. In fact, in a lot of these books, there's words I don't understand. Well, we'll go look those up and we'll all learn together. So that's another reason why we have got to, be reading books to kids. And another reason is, the attention span. When kids are 2, 3, 4 years old, they bounce all over the place. If you can get them 20 minutes in your lap, with a concentration and self-discipline, this goes a long way in teaching them the other things that they need to learn in life besides what they learn on the internet.
All right, so that's some good stuff. First readers, they actually state that children that read with families greater than 3 times or more per week, their average, they end up scoring 25% in the top 25 category in comprehension. Uh, so I totally agree with what you're saying, because we're talking about creating stronger, smarter children. Uh, and then those that don't read as much, they end up scoring much lower. So that's really impressive. What do you think about it as far as on the parent side, being that type of role model that actually takes the time, that understands that 20 minutes, 2 to 3 to 4 times a week is imperative in developing their children?
Well, every parent and grandparent should keep in mind that it's necessary to teach children how to think, not what to think. They're going to learn over time what to think, but it's our job to teach them how to think. So again, going back to just reading a book and talking about how to think, all of us, everybody has about 20 kids' books laying around their house, and there's 100 great kids books. I mean, I want them to read my book, but there's 100 others that they can read besides my book out there to teach their kids. So, first thing you should do is make sure you let the child pick out the book. So let them go get the book that they want to read, so they have an involvement in what you're doing. So again, knowing that we want to teach them how to think, not what to think, but how to think, we should immediately start to question them as soon as they bring that book over. Before you even read the book, what do you think is going to happen in this book? Ask the child. What do you think is going to happen? Let's start with their imagination, because as you know, imagination really helps create the whole thinking process. During the reading the book, who are the characters in this book? What is the setting? Can you relate to that? Is there anything that in your life that seems familiar to you? Are you like any of these characters? Do you know this setting? Is this a setting that's not different than where I grew up? And then when you're done reading the book, you want to ask them, What was your favorite part of the book? Much like when you should be asking them every night at dinner time, what was your favorite part of the day? Yeah. We have to keep questioning them. I think of parents, if we keep questioning, keep asking them questions, let them think, because creating the curiosity really is what builds imagination. So we have to create that curiosity, and I think that will go a long way.
I like it. I like it a lot. Those are some great tips, questioning children to ensure comprehension, relating the material to what's going on, helping them to create that curiosity. Gramps, what brought you to this? How did you get to this type of mindset where this was so important to you?
Well, I guess if I go back to my earlier career, when I did a 11-week backpack when I was in college through Europe with a friend of mine. We did all the great things when you're backpacking. We slept in train stations and youth hostels. We rode the trains. We did everything you do. But I decided I was going to keep a daily journal. And so I kept this journal, and it was about the people we met and what we did. And I put it away. And about 10 years later, my friend called me. He says, "You got to read this journal." He says, "You got to go back to that. You got to see how much empathy we had for everybody we were dealing with." So I said, "Well, maybe one day I'll grow up and be a writer." Then I got into the business world, and I was in major corporations and retailing. I was in a company down where you are in Florida, and I was in wholesaling, and I ended up starting a couple companies on my own. One I sold to investors, and the other one I took public. So the company that I took public was the company that the book is based on, that you were talking about earlier, The Secrets of Retailing, How to Beat Walmart. And our customer base were the moms and the pops who survive and thrive against the chains. We carry a little over 300,000 products. If you walked into a Walmart or a Macy's or a Target, all the categories of products you find in those kinds of stores. So we're pretty dominant on the internet because we were early on the internet in the 2000s. We had thousands and thousands of keywords and phrases that were organically ranked 1, 2, and 3. So if you remember 20 years ago, Katrina hit down in Louisiana and Mississippi. And because we were so dominant on the internet, we were getting calls from churches and schools who wanted to help the people down there. So they were buying things from us like underwear and socks and toothbrush and toothpastes. And then when the trailers opened up, they were buying all the things you need for your kitchen and for your bedroom and for your bathroom. And so it opened up our minds that there's a whole other world out there, that the nonprofit world is underserved. Because they can buy products from us at the wholesale and closeout prices, and so they can support more people and buy more goods. So we pivoted, and about 50% of the business now comes from nonprofit organizations. So that gave me a chance to really get involved in all these major nonprofits. And about half the articles I've written for the Huffington Post are all on the homeless and the underprivileged and so forth. And so, in fact, the way my book ends, and again, I'm not supposed to tell an ending to a book, but this is only a 32-page book. Yeah, the way that the book ends is Olivia, who was 8 at the time, we got all the kids together because the dad brought all the kids together because they were fighting and stealing and all kinds of stuff with each other. And she came up with the idea to give all of their toys to the homeless downtown. And so that all came about. That's a true story. Olivia did that with all these kids, but I think that all came about because of my experiences that I have been dealing with over the years. That we as a society have got to support the less privileged and the underprivileged.
That's pretty awesome right there. So a lot of takeaways right there, and I appreciate how you really developed that story to give us a good understanding of where you were and how you got where you are now. When I think back, 16 years ago, it was Katrina, right? It was August of 2005, and I remember exactly where I was when Katrina was moving through Florida. I remember it, because my daughter, second daughter, was born on that day, and my grandmother called us up, and she was like, "Hey, what are you going to name? What are you going to name her? Are you going to name her Katrina?" And we're like, "No, we're not naming her Katrina." Yeah, so her name is Sienna, which means uh, gift of God, and that's what we named her, gift of God. So anyway, to get more at it, I recognize something that you were saying. You were saying that you realized that there were certain people that were underserved. Now, I put a couple of things together because up until that point, you had like 10 years of journaling, and there was a lot of empathy that was within side of what you were doing. But at the conclusion, at this culminating moment inside of your history, inside of life, and inside of the history of all those around you, you found that there was an opportunity for you to serve others. And in that brief moment, time and chance, right? Because it's very important. Time caught up with you, and all that you had been doing really had prepared you for that one day right then to then turn around and start to serve other individuals. To me, that is powerful, and that is exactly what this show is about. How did that feel? And can you just walk me through the feeling that you had when you realized this is what I do?
You know, the main theme of my children's book is, at what age do you begin to take responsibility for your actions? Okay? Is it 3 years old? Is it 13 years old? Is it 23 years old?
Yes,
I
yes,
got
yes.
plenty of my contemporaries at 63 years old that still don't take responsibility for their actions. Yeah, and so if there's one message that we can get through with this book is, start taking responsibility for your actions. That's how this book kind of ends, is you got to start taking responsibility for your actions.
Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. I love that you just said that. That was prolific, you know. And the thought is, I mean, honestly, because this is something that I'm teaching my 11-year-old right now, is that at some point in time you have to own up to certain things. You have to realize that the world is not conspiring against you. I don't want you to have that type of mindset. If that's the mindset you choose, it's the mindset you choose, but it's not going to be because I am not offering you education on something else. I would love for my children, as you, we had this conversation, a pre-conversation about it, where we discussed how it's important to impart with children the facility of judgment, good judgment, so that they can be creative in their own mind and make their own decisions and weigh things out to be able to make good decisions. So, at what age do you take responsibility for your action? Is perfect. I hope you write that book because that is amazing. Ask the question. Ask it to everybody. Gramps, write it for everyone. Write it for a 10-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, because too many people are missing their opportunity. They got to take responsibility for the things that they say, the things that they do, and the places they are. And I think you put that well. I just want to hear some feedback from that.
So basically, what you're saying is, the title of my book, I Don't Want to Turn 3, is the same title as I Don't Want to Turn 20. I don't want to turn 40. I don't want to turn 50.
Yes.
A great story is, my granddaughter Olivia, who just turned 9, came to me last week. She says, "I got a great idea for our next book." She says, "I got a book. Let's call I Don't Want to Turn 10." I said, "You don't want to turn 10? I mean, why don't you want to turn 10?" She says, "Well, I'm going to have to learn how to drive here pretty soon." I said, "That's another 7 years away. Why are you worrying about it now?" And she says, "I got to start thinking about going to college and picking out college." I said, "That's 9 years away. Why are you worrying about it now?" But if you think about it throughout our lives, we hit different ages. I don't want to turn 40. I remember I didn't want to turn 40, but why? What is it in the past and what is it in the future? So that's something we should all be asking ourselves, is, how do we look at the future with a positive attitude?
Beautiful, beautiful. I love it. We do. We definitely need to have that positive attitude. So, one thing that you had mentioned earlier, maybe about 10 minutes ago, was about mistakes. and how through these mistakes, we as parents, you and I, and many others, are growing wiser. What is it that we could say to parents that are still in the middle? Because there's a lot of young parents right now, 14, 15, 16-year olds that are having children. And I'm speaking from the state's point of view, obviously, because this may be custom in different areas of the world. But from the state's point of view, this is very young to be 14, 15, 16 having children. And what can you really impart at the age of 14 or 15 to that child? So what can we offer, or what would you say to those young parents in dealing with their children?
Well, earlier, we talked about one of the roles of parents and grandparents is to ask questions. We were going through the book and saying, when you're asking questions, what do you think is going to happen? How can you relate and all that? But I think there's one question that all parents need to be asking their children today and tomorrow and every day of the year. It doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're 16, 17, or you're 25 or you're 40. The question I think that we should all be asking our children is, what did you do today that was nice to someone else? Okay, think about that. The first time you ask that question to your child, what did you do today that was nice to somebody else? They're going to look at you very confused. I mean, like in my book, all the cousins were fighting over the toys. They were stealing each other's stuff. They weren't nice to each other. Okay? But if they started to share their toys, is that being nice to someone else? Yeah. So on any level. I mean, if the first time you ask your child this, they're going to look at you and say, "What are you talking about?" But if you ask it consistently every single day, what did you do today that was nice to someone else? By the fourth or fifth day, they're going to say, "I got to say something to mom and dad," because they're going to ask me that every day. So whether it's, opening the door for someone, or whether it's helping an old lady across the street, it's something that we need to ingrain into every child today. Because again, they're being hit so fast with the internet and electronics. We need to offset a lot of that with what is real about life. But can you imagine if the majority of this generation was thinking every day, what did I do nice to someone else today? How that'll change America in 20 or 30 years from now? It would just be a game changer for all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that that is well put. Basically what you're saying, what I'm taking in, is you're saying teach kindness and compassion. And by doing this daily, we're actually creating positive affirmations inside of our children, because children essentially are like little computers. They are what you put into them. And if they are the sum of all results, and if what we put inside of them is positivity and create that thought process of compassion, then, as you just said, we can offset some of the amounts of negativity that they are receiving through social media or school or whatever. Now, that's a powerful statement. How are some of the young adults, how do they keep themselves away from falling into the negative trap through using social media incorrectly, or having the wrong circle of friends? What would you say to those young adults that are now parents?
Well, first thing to do is put down the phone. Again, going back to, we are the role models. Okay, if we're on the phone all the time, our kids are going to be on the phone. Yeah, as a role model, think about it. I can guarantee if you say a cuss word to your child, 2, 3, 4 years old, I can guarantee you that you're going to hear that same word 4 or 5 more times that day. It's just because you're the role model. They repeat who you are. So obviously, if you're going to say a cuss word to your child, you want to immediately offset that by talking about things they like bananas and blueberries and dinosaurs and things like that. But you are the role model. So put the phone down, spend some time, and just be with your kids. Just go back to the 30s, 40s, and 50s when we didn't have all this great stuff. Yeah, and when kids my age, when I was growing up, we go out and play baseball that afternoon. played basketball in the afternoon. We weren't sitting around the home with the phones and the internet. So we've got to offset that. Again, it's great that we have that because again, these are going to be the smartest group we've ever had. But we have to just continue to offset that.
Awesome, awesome. So I want to ask you. I want you to kind of build this up because I want to ask you. I want you to give me three things if we could give it to parents, because what I am detecting that you're saying, I 100% agree with it, is be present with your children. And so I know that there's plenty of people, young and old, the young adult parents, as well as 20-year-old parents, 30-year-old parents, they're all still in that same generation, where cell phones are a huge thing. And I mean, the iPhone, how long has the iPhone been around for? Maybe about 14 years, 14, 15 years, something like that. And so everybody that was of a youth age, 10 years and up, they now are 25 having children. They've been glued to the iPhone ever since. So what would you say to them as well as to some of those that are heavy hitter, hard workers, workaholics, and they have children? If you could give me three things that they could do to be mindfully present with their children, then I think that would be a great set of advice coming from Gramps.
Well, let me kind of frame that more towards grandparents, okay? Because again, grandparents have to get involved in what they're doing. Now, when I was growing up, I lived in a small town. My uncle lived up the street. My grandmother was 2 blocks away. So we were all together. I had my whole family there to help raise me. But in today's world, we're scattered all over the place. Take me, for example. I was here in Arizona. I've got two of my grandkids in Austin, Texas. I got two of my grandkids in Orlando, Florida. We're so scattered that it's a whole different way of communication. Now, little kids aren't going to call you. 2, 3-year-olds aren't going to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, let's talk to grandma." No, that doesn't happen. So you've got to come up with ways to reach out to them, because when you think about it, and again, I'm looking at grandparents, is that you only have 18 years to influence a child's life. Well, probably a lot less when they get into their teen years, but so you only have a small window of opportunity. And in our case, the grandparents, especially with we're talking about COVID earlier, this pandemic. I mean, when you think about that, 16% of the American population is over 65, but 75% of the deaths in COVID were with people over 65. So we are losing our generation much quicker. Besides the normal way we die, we got all that on top of it. So we're here today and gone tomorrow. We have got to take advantage of everything that we can do today because we don't know if we're going to be here tomorrow. So, in my particular case, I was lucky enough to have all 6 grandkids here for 6 weeks during COVID. So, where the world shut down. So they had a chance to really see our house and our yard and really get to know each other and get to know us. But, for some reason, and I can't tell you why, but for 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kids, the one thing, the language that they all talk, and I've seen them with their friends talking the same language, are dinosaurs. Now, I don't know why these kids love dinosaurs, but every one of them knows and loves a dinosaur. So, they can name little 2, 3-year-olds. They can name these long names of dinosaurs. They can't say so short, but these long names of dinosaurs they know. They can tell me what dinosaurs eat meat and which ones which ones fight with each other. As far as I'm concerned, dinosaurs are small, medium, and large. But these kids, they can really, really understand these things. So knowing that, when all my kids left, we decided that we've got to stay in touch with these kids. And so we decided that we got 6 little dinosaurs at our house, that we were going to take our dinosaurs and put them someplace different in the house every night. So like, for instance, we took these dinosaurs and put them into the refrigerator, and they were eating blueberries one night. Another night, they were by the sink with grandma washing dishes with soap on their noses. Another night, they were playing the piano. Another night, they were walking up the steps. So we did this for 50 different nights outside and inside our house, because we knew the kids could relate to this. So we became part of their routine. The mom and dad in Orlando would give their kids a bath, they read them a book, and then the kids would say, "What are the dinosaurs doing tonight?" So they would call my wife's iPhone so we could FaceTime, and they say, "Where's Gramps? Where's Gramps? What are the dinosaurs doing tonight?" So that was our way of influencing and keeping contact, and teaching our kids what we knew. But I'm sure your listeners can come up with all kinds of other ways too. We've got to stay in contact with them, because again, they're not going to pick up the phone and call you unless they have an event like "Where are the dinosaurs tonight?" So that would be my advice to any of the parents. Make sure that you're doing something relatable every single day to get the kids involved and want to be involved, because then they'll want to learn more and more from you.
Awesome, Gramps. I love that. To summarize those two things, I heard reach out to your children intentionally, and then make time intentionally to be relatable to your grandchildren. And I think that that's a beautiful story. I mean, right now, when you were saying that, I was thinking about not just my children that are in my house, but I started thinking about my cousins and, just all of those people that I influence within my family that I don't speak with often. How could I do this? I started to think about setting aside a certain amount of time. I mean, so many things just came through my mind, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Listen, we're going to get ready to close this session of It Starts With Me out. Is there anything, how can people get in contact with you? What do they need to do to find out where you are, how they can speak with you, and how they can get a book?
Well, just to, before we start on that, something I wanted to comment on what you just mentioned. It takes a village today to raise a kid. All right, especially with all these single family homes, and these kids that are, a village includes mom and dad, it includes grandma and grandpa, it includes brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts and cousins, it includes friends. So don't lose sight that it takes this village to raise this child. And so we want to make sure that we go beyond just our own kids. A lot of kids can use our help, just like you were talking about. Pick up the phone now, start to call them, talk to them, influence them, because that's what this whole society is based on. So, and if I was to leave you with one thought, it is, when you love, you will teach others to love. Okay, so think about that. Again, when you pick up the phone to call your nieces and nephews, when you love, you'll teach them to love. So you asked me about my book. You can buy it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, about 100 other sites out there, or you can come to my site. It's grampsjeffrey.com. And I Don't Want to Turn 3 is the name of the book. And I would love to continue this conversation with any of your listeners. They can email me at grampsjeffrey@gmail.com, and we can keep going. So I appreciate you inviting me.
Awesome, Gramps. Wonderful, wonderful wisdom, wisdom from Gramps. And we're very grateful to have you on the show. We'd love to check back in with you maybe later on this year and see how things are going. All right?
Great. We're glad to come back.
All right. Thanks a lot, Gramps. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye-bye.
What a great show, right? All right. So we're out here on the road, and we made time to speak with Gramps Jeffrey. And he's just genuine. He's sincere. He's just a genuinely nice, good guy. And this kindness that he shows up inside of this podcast is obviously that kindness and that empathy that he has showed up inside of his family's life. Some things that we want to take away. At what age do you take responsibility for your action? This is something that you need to think about. At what age will you take responsibility for your action? Offsetting negative through affirmations. Offset, if you want to help your children, your grandchildren, offset that negativity through positive affirmations. Do this thing daily. And then reach out to your children, to your grandchildren. Make time for them. Be relatable to them, because you only have a short time to influence them in a positive way. No matter where you are, we want you to know that it doesn't start with everyone else. It starts with you, just like it starts with me. Peace.